There we go. We're pressing record now. All right, guys, welcome to episode 9 of Actors Unscripted. And today I have the lovely Loren Peta with us. That is Peter, right? Or Peta?
It's Loren Peta.
Loren Peta. There we go. Loren Peta, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Benito. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I'm very excited today because a number of things. So, Loren here, not only has she been involved in a pretty big production, I think Bladerunner 2077 is one of them, but also another one, which I'm going to geek out on a little bit, is Star Citizen. Now, Star Citizen is a video game that you've done, which which I have some interest in because I'm a bit of a gamer myself. So I was like, oh, this is pretty snazzy. This is pretty cool. But Loren, tell us, I'm curious about like your journey. Tell us how everything has come up to this point. Tell us how, like, your experiences, how you got into acting. I'm very curious.
Okay, so when I was born, just joking, you don't want me to go that far back.
Yeah, go all the way to the beginning of time.
It all began in my mother's uterus.
Oh man.
I think so. I've had so many careers, actually, Benito. It's like I honestly don't really know where to start. I remember saying when I was in high school, I was like 12, 13, and I remember saying I wanted to be an actor, but I never actually even remotely gave it a shot until I was 30. So right. I think I knew it was going to be hard. It took me a long time to, I think, even believe in myself. So it was something I used to say when I was a teenager, and then it just kind of went on the back burner. I grew up in Perth in Western Australia, which back then, I mean, now if you've ever been there, it's really quite a cool city. But back then it was a bit sleepy. Right. And when I was 17, I just really wanted to get out. So I joined the full-time Australian Army. That seemed like a good idea at the time. And then when I got out, I came over to the UK and I bought a one-way ticket to Rome, actually, first. I left Australia thinking I don't think I'm going to come back. I think, I want a more exciting life. And I actually skipped something here. I was a personal trainer for a while in Australia, and then I came over here, and I got a job in business development for a software company. And that job took me to the States, and I lived there for 4 years. And then my project there finished and I came back to the UK, and it was then that I turned 30 and I'd done a number of things. I also missed, I was a hairdresser. I did hairdressing school for a while. Like there's a few things in there, but we could be here for hours about the first of my life. But yeah, it wasn't until I had this real switch where I came back here where everything was, I had to find housing that was smaller and more expensive. And I just went back to the job I was doing before after having this, interesting life in the States. And let's face it, I didn't really care about, computer software. It was, I guess, the lifestyle and the people in the company that kept me in that job for 7 years. So I kind of hit this point. And when I turned 30, I thought, it's now or never. I kind of need to give this acting thing a go. I know it's going to be hard. I know I'm probably going to be broke for the rest of my life. But if I don't do it now, it's something I'm always going to regret. So I quit my job and I started from the bottom, and I spent about 3 years doing student films and doing courses and all sorts of stuff. And I got a job on a 24-hour casino channel, where you spin the wheel and call the numbers out.
No way. Okay.
I still remember going in for my audition for that thinking, this is ridiculous. I've never done anything like this in my life. I'm never going to get this job. And I got it. And it was one of those, it was kind of the first situation where I thought, if there's an opportunity, you need to take it. Like I thought of a million reasons why when I got the job, because, you know, there's one thing auditioning for something. And this is where I think as actors, we can often self-jeopardize ourselves. It's one thing auditioning, but then you've actually got to do the job. And I think that's where the fear kind of takes over. So I was thinking of a million ways how I could get out of actually doing this job, and I couldn't think of one. So I actually had to do it. And I think that did a lot for my confidence sort of moving forward. And then it's one of those things where I got an agent and I got better jobs, and then I got a better agent and I got better jobs, and then I got a better agent, and you get better jobs. And then you don't get jobs for years.
Yeah. This is the thing, like because I'm so young, I think it's so like crucial for everyone, you know, my primary audience are people my age and everyone that I know and all of that. It's so crucial for us to understand that there's such a bigger aspect to life than just this one thing that we think is everything. Like the fact that you just said there, like for years you don't get something, for years you don't get given something. You have to find something in this life that fulfills you at a similar level, because it's just not like, what's the word? It's not attainable to constantly focus on one thing and just pray and hope, especially with something with acting where it's so out of your control. It's just not. Yeah, it's so much out of your control. You only can bring so much, and then it's just gone. It's out of your hands. It's just up to other people. So I think it is really important to find other things in life that fulfill you. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the bottom line, to be honest, because also it's not realistic. I think the biggest question you have to ask yourself as an actor is, why am I doing this? You know, the worst question, or the worst thing actually someone can, you know, I have friends that'll say, oh, are you famous yet? Or, you know, and it's just like, oh, you don't get it, do you? You know, all most of us want is to make, you know, a livable amount of money to do what we love full time, to find characters and tell stories. And, you know, if it's indie films, that don't pay much for the rest of our lives, most of us will be pretty happy as long as we can pay the bills and just do the thing we like. But like you said, the important thing is there is so much of it that is out of our control. And I actually think where I sort of started to come through that point of just absolutely living for that audition, and then living for that phone call to say you got a pencil, and then living for that phone call to say you got the job, and the highs and the lows, was after I got a job that changed my life for the 6 months I was working on it. And then the day I wrapped, I remember I had a different agent at the time, and I remember flying into London, and then as I got in, getting a phone call saying I have a commercial audition the next day, and having the next day, after doing this amazing job, to go back into doing commercial auditions, just like it never happened. And I went on then. I didn't get a lot of work after that. And that's when I actually, I went on to do my yoga teacher training. So I've been a personal trainer for 20 years, and very passionate about the fitness industry.
Yeah.
But not so much from a what you look like perspective or going to the gym perspective, but in terms of helping people to feel fulfilled from movement, you know, more from a mental health perspective, from a look at what our bodies can do from us. Isn't that amazing perspective? And my yoga teacher training wasn't something that I never thought I would actually end up teaching. I just did it because I needed to do something for me. I thought, what am I passionate about? What do I love? And yoga was something, by the way, that I had been doing daily for years up until this point. And I mean, I suppose we'll get to that at some point, but I actually think that passion and that practice is what got me the roles that I got. But doing that teacher training actually ended up completely changing my life in terms of you know, having other work that I love, having other things to fulfill me, and having another way to feel like I'm contributing to society and being a part of it as a whole, which I think as actors, we can feel quite isolated from.
I have to say, I really appreciate what you're giving out right now, because right now, I've been feeling a similar sort of way, where it's like, do I really want to be going like so almost mentally insane over one job? And I'm so young and I have so much stuff I can learn to discover. Like, I really, I really do want to find something else that I can get really fulfilled from, like the same sort of level, because it is a little bit worrisome that, and I'm sure you can relate, where you put so much of your heart into one thing and one thing alone, and it doesn't sort of reciprocate, you know? So I'm actually really grateful for this, because it's resonating with me. It's resonating.
I think it's something that I think coming into it later in life, you know, entering the industry at 30 and already having so much life experience, and also, I guess, a little bit of a business head on me as well, is, I mean, don't get me wrong, as hard, you know, I was so reluctant to come into the industry. It took me that long to even get the resilience and the confidence to even decide to give this industry a shot. I don't think I would have survived if I came into it any earlier.
Yeah.
But I think coming into it, I've always come into it from the perspective of, well, I guess like the rejection, I don't think has ever bothered me as much as it does, say, my friends who went to drama school and have been actors their whole lives, and their side jobs are actors' side jobs, so like in immersive theatre, or in hospitality, or jobs that are not separate from the industry in a way. So, you know, I see auditioning as working. I get this script, I get this character. I actually enjoy the process of auditioning. I don't get hung up on the end result, because it is what it is. And I don't put everything into this industry. I don't. When I get the audition, I do. For that moment, for that few hours, from the beginning of the audition to the end, once it's submitted, I put what I have into it. But I still don't do take after take anymore. You know, I do one take, and, you know, as long as you get, you know, you don't mess up the lines or whatever, I do one take, and then, you know, you do another one just in case, and you just send it off. Because if you've done your prep and you know, you learned your lines, by the time you turn that camera on, you don't need to do 40 takes. So I don't kind of get in my head about it, because at the end of the day, I don't think it really, you know, you see that character in that script, how you see it. So no matter how many takes you do, what the viewer is looking at is still more or less the same. If they like your look and the way that you perceive that character, it doesn't really matter what take you use. Does that make sense?
True.
And then it sends off, and then I get on with my life. And it's these hobbies. It's my military experience, my, you know, living in multiple countries. I love hiking. I camp in the summer. I'm very active. I run ultra marathons. I'm a fitness coach, a yoga teacher. Those things are all the things that get me auditions. I just finished a self-tape before we came on here, where they wanted someone with military experience, you know. So if you don't have interests, if you don't have hobbies, and if you don't have other passions, then you are doing yourself out of, I'm not saying work, because Benito, I cannot tell you how many auditions I have had lately, and I have not got a job. And I'm just going to be so honest with this. But I get the auditions, and that's all you can do. And then you recognize, you know, sometimes I send it off and I think, I didn't really feel that was pretty shit. And other times I send it off and I was like, I fucking nailed it. And you don't know. Often the times you think you nail it, you never hear back. And then you think it was horrible and you get shortlisted. So you really do need to, and this is, I think, where the yoga comes in, and the yoga has helped me, is, you know, life is about building these blocks and then letting them go, building these blocks and then letting them go, right? And it's the same, you know, nothing, everything is transitory. Nothing, we don't own anything, and the world owes us nothing. So do your best, beautiful. Enjoy the experience, and then let it go.
Oh, this is so good. This is so good. This is great. It's so true. Everything you said is just so true. It's literally like, everyone. Yeah, I needed that anyway. I needed that for sure. But moving on, I am curious about your experience on Blade Runner. How was that whole process? Where, especially on such a big project with big companies, how was that for you?
Yeah, so Blade Runner 2049 was, I didn't even know what I was auditioning for, by the way. So I got given a script, which was not what I did on the, you know, it was actually a script from Ex Machina. So didn't even know what it's for. It was back in the day where they used to actually bring us into the room, like way more than which was nice. And I went in. And I remember doing so many takes. And, you know, I don't know if you feel the same way, but from my experience, if you do a take and they say, thank you very much, that was great, bye, you're like, well, there's no way I'm getting that. I did one take. Yeah. Whereas often when they say, yeah, cool, just do it like this, just do it again like this. And you think like, when I first started in the industry, I was thinking I was doing a bad job, but it's actually because they like you and they want to see how malleable you are and how well you can take direction. And, you know, so I remember doing take after take after take until at the end I was delivering my character and my lines and everything in a completely different way to the way that I perceived it. And then I went in for a second audition, and it wasn't until they then said, Denis Villeneuve wants to see you, and he was in Budapest, and I was like, okay. Cool. Okay. Cool. So they flew me to Budapest to have a very short meeting with him and then flew me home. This is so weird.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, I know. So they flew me there. And that's when he explained to me what it was and the role that I was doing, that I would be playing Rachel, and I'd be doing a lot of, so it would be me playing the part on the set and then doing a lot of CGI to merge my face with Sean Young's, and blah, blah, blah. And then he said, so are you interested? And I was like, just let me check my, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I'm available.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting because, you know, I can't believe for how small the role was, because it was such a significant role. Even though I was only in a scene for 2 minutes, it was like 6 months of my life. Yeah, it was crazy. Like not ongoing, not continuous, but they flew me to Budapest several times to get, like costume tests. And then they flew me to LA to do a lot of like motion capture stuff. And then we actually, you know, obviously did all the filming in Budapest, and then more sort of motion capture and CGI. So yeah, it was a really interesting process. And it was interesting having to, I must have watched the original Blade Runner 50 times. At least the scenes with Sean Young in anyway, because I'm having to, I don't want to give any spoilers, but I didn't play her. I played a replica of.
I think it's fine now. I don't think spoilers are gonna.
It's been. If you haven't seen it, then clearly you just don't really care. So
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just gonna talk about it. So it was really interesting having to having to replicate the character and the voice and everything as well that sort of she had. So and then just I actually had stunt training to learn how to die, to get shot, which I quite enjoyed.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I had like a sore neck for about 5 days afterwards because apparently your body stays stationary and your head just like sort of gets blown off and then you drop, So I had to like properly, that was one of my favorite parts.
That sounds, wow. 6 months is a lot of time, especially
from beginning to end. I think I was cast in April and then I wrapped in September. So was that so May, June, July, August, September?
Pretty much 5-6 months. I think like, especially when having to imitate someone who already exists, I think is already a greater challenge. Like in terms of, like you said, you mentioned vocally, how is that process like? Because I can't lie, as an actor, that is one thing I'm very intimidated by, is having to replicate other real life people, because that's like you can't break that. Like if it's slightly off, it instantly could break the suspense and disbelief you're trying to create. So how did you find that?
Well, I had time, I had time to practice and get into the right headspace. I think, all actors have their different skills, I guess. And I'm certainly not skilled in just being able to bash out like one accent after another, for instance. You know how people can just like Irish, South African, American, Scottish, and it's perfect and they can just do this.
It's quite crazy.
I know I can't do that. But what I can do, and whenever I sort of like, even if I get a script for an audition, and I remember I had to do an Israeli accent once. And I went into the audition and, I went on YouTube and I was watching interviews from, Israeli actors. And I had my script, and I have to have a character, by the way. And I think that makes a huge difference. So it's not just a matter of doing a voice or an accent, it's embodying that character, right? So I find that character, I find that accent, I learn my lines. And then I went into this audition and I was really quite pleased with my accent. And then I walk out of the audition and it's gone. Do you know what I mean? And it's the next thing. So I think that was sort of how it was with playing Rachel in Blade Runner. It was like, this is it. I'm in that headspace. And then it's gone. So it's just like compartmentalization, if that makes sense.
You're almost like immersing yourself fully in the moment that you're doing it, and then it just instantly just disappears. Just like
when you
goes.
step out of it. I mean, it's not like a Jared Leto kind of sense where he was obviously in my he was in my scene.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually get to meet Jared Leto. I only got to meet Wallace because he's in character. He's literally in character the entire time. But it's not like what do you call it, method acting. I wouldn't like, I'm definitely not a method actor.
Right.
But I'm also not the kind of actor where I can just be on set like chatting in my normal accent, in my normal voice about something that happened yesterday, and then 2 seconds later it's action, which is actually what Harrison Ford was doing. So you've got Jared Leto on one extreme, Harrison Ford on the other, who was just had this ability to just be chatting away, friendly as anything. He's just chatting to all the crew, and then the next second he's crying, and I'm like, how? But I guess that comes with the experience and being a seasoned pro.
Yeah, probably
somewhere in between where you know, like you need to just be in the zone. But awesome. I had time, like I had weeks when I was cast to when I had to do that. So I said before, I watched the films. I just, I did my research.
It's the prep the whole time before you even get there.
Absolute prep.
Yeah. I see that all the time, and it's definitely it's definitely got to be one of the most important things, because that's how these people just like Harrison Ford. They just talk and be themselves and then just switch it on like that.
Yeah, because he's been doing this for decades, right? He just knows what he's doing. But yeah, I'm an over preparer. So, you know, by the time I got on set, I felt like I was meant to be there just as much as everyone else. I felt very comfortable. I didn't feel nervous. I just felt like this is where I'm meant to be. Whereas if I hadn't over prepared, it's almost too easy, because I put way more time into preparing than I had to, but I just think that's the best way, because it's just second nature. Then you can then just draw from these things rather than having to find them.
Yeah, I would think that being in that scenario, you do not want to be worrying so much about your own decisions and choices, because you just don't have the time to do that, especially in such a big production, you know?
Well, in any production, to be honest, because, the amount of indie films I've done, and it's the same, if you haven't learnt your lines, if you're sitting there thinking, oh, wait, how does my character move again? What kind of quirks do they have? If you're having to think about those things, everyone else is waiting. And you're letting people down. So yeah, you need to be so comfortable in this character's skin that it just comes out naturally.
Just naturally, just like that. Amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So even like, and earlier, I want to go back on something you said earlier. You said that big breaks don't exist. Do you, what do you
Before we
think by
started
that?
recording, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's any, I mean, I'm sure people have had them, but, after doing Blade Runner, of course, it's just like, and having, and again, like, of course, I was only in the film for, 2 minutes, but it was a significant role. Obviously there's this, like, there's this big thing that it wasn't my face. Well, it was, but like, it wasn't, it was merged with, I'm not recognizable unless you know me. Like, now that you know me. So when my family watched it, and by the way, I was under such an embargo. My own husband had no idea. Nobody knew what I was doing. And I couldn't tell anyone until it got released. So I had a year and a half, 2 years where,
nothing.
Yeah, didn't tell a soul. Because it's easier that way. Even if you think, oh, I'll just tell my closest person, don't, because they will have a few drinks and they're going to be proud of you. And like, it's the last people you can trust is the people you love. Trust me, when it comes to
like NDAs.
Yeah, exactly. So it's better just not to say anything. It's easier that way as well, just not to say anything. But so my whole family and all my friends watched it, because by then they knew what I was in, by the way. They just didn't know what role I had, because of course then Rachel was a big surprise. No one knew if she was going to appear in it or not. And as soon as I came on screen, they knew it was me, because you can see that but that played a big part in me. I think things are changing in the industry where it's being recognized that, when it comes to CGI and gaming and, things where actors aren't recognizable, it still requires, just exactly the same kind of performance. It's not like you're not less of an actor. It's not less of an acting role for you to do that. But it's certainly taken quite a few years, I think. And I still think if you're not in the industry, the general public doesn't get it. Like, I remember getting quite upset when it came out, and all the news articles about me were incorrect in some way. First of all, some would say British actress, and I'm like, well, and this is when you realize journalists don't necessarily do their homework. I'm like, well, I'm Australian, so or they'd say body double. I'm like, well, I wasn't a body double, because that's a completely different thing. Like, I performed this role. So that's sort of another thing that I wasn't expecting, and that I didn't I didn't like, and that you have to learn to brush off as an actress. You can't control how you're going to be perceived, what the media is going to say about you, like any of those things. So I thought that I would get more recognition for the work that I put into this role than I did. So, that was one of those things that, that I sort of, that I had to process, I think, for the couple of years after that, because
100%.
doing something like that as well, your agent doesn't want you to, your agent's there looking at your best interests. And as an actor, I was quite happy just to go back to doing shitty horror films because they're fun and it's work. But your agent's like, you can't do those anymore because then you know what I mean. So
yeah,
almost like miss out on all this work that you might have had to audition for, but you're almost being given these roles now because you've done this thing, but you can't take them because you're trying to, but there's no sort of, it doesn't work like that in this industry. It's not like in another job where you get your job and you perform well and you get a promotion, and you perform well and you get a promotion and a pay rise. It doesn't work like that in this industry at all. So yeah, I think this is where you appreciate where you're at, no matter where you are in your career. And if you get a role, you appreciate that and you enjoy it. And then, I mean, I think in any situation, you're naturally going to have a low after having a high in the industry. And I think it's important to, process every stage that we're going to, but there's also this point where you need to go, okay, come on now, let's put our chin up and get on with the other things that I love to do, because it is the hardest industry to be in the world, and it isn't realistic for most of us to be getting amazing full-time work for the rest of our lives. But if you're in it for the right reasons, you're in it for the long game, right? And this is what I say, like, there's going to be roles for me when I'm 60 and 70 and 80. So, find joy in your life and find things that you love to do in the meantime. And I hear it a lot of actors, well, I don't want to do anything else. Find something then. Find something else you want to do, because it's only going to improve your life, your self-worth, and your joy.
I'm definitely one of those people. Like, I don't know what else I would do. Just go look for it, mate. Just go look for it. That's definitely
You're doing this.
Yeah,
aren't you?
I'm doing this too. Yeah, that's definitely one thing. But I have to say, like, every episode that I do, I always learn something new. Like, I'm always learning something every time I do one of these, and it's great because it's sort of, I think everyone else like watching could also relate. Like, when you understand outside of your own bubble and outside of your own life, you really do, that naivety sort of goes away. Like, the whole thing of, well, we don't know everything. I don't know everything at all. I've barely lived. So this is just like, it's just so, it's so good to just like listen to people like yourself and giving out all of these like amazing nuggets of truth, and like from your own experience that you've had. It's just like, it's just wow. It just blows me away sometimes. But now thinking of another job as well, which I'm curious, which is like a different avenue, and I'm very passionate about voiceover work and working in games. It's one of a passion of mine. You did Star Citizen, which is a cool little something I just saw. And I was like, I know this. I've played this before. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, I loved it. And it's something that, again, I thought that I would get more of that kind of work,
right?
Because it's interesting. Each part, you think of all these different avenues when it comes to acting. Like, presenting, that's part of it. Voiceover, cool. Gaming, I could do that on the side, but every single piece of it is just as hard as getting a role in front of a camera acting. Like, it's all just as hard. And I thought, to get into gaming, it's really, really hard to even get an audition if you don't have experience with CGI, if you don't have motion capture experience. So I thought, given all the experience I had with doing Bladerunner, and being athletic and being sort of, that sort of look that they might like when it comes to gaming, that I could get loads of work doing that. And I got that one job, which, again, the audition process was hard and long. It's not easy. And it's a completely different type of acting, again, in itself. And you would know that. You would see, like, you have to move in a specific way and, speak in a specific way. But yeah, to be honest, that kind of thing is right up my alley. Like, I have a lot of fun with that, and because I'm so active, and any sort of action roles are things that I have a lot of interest in. And contrary to what people might think when they first say, "Oh, what's your ideal role as an actor?" which is something we get asked all the time, right?
All the time. Yeah.
And I'm nearly 42, by the way, so it sounds so. Just to put into perspective, a lot of the time I talk about all this life experience, and people are like, "Are you having me on?" I'm like, no, I'm 42. So, so I've been around. What was I saying, Benito? Oh yeah, my
ideal acting role. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I love shitty action films. Like, all the shitty action films, I love. And those are the roles that I just think would be the most fun, right? So the next best thing is video games. You just get to, like, run around and give cheesy lines out, and it's fantastic. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would say it's harder work than just, like, acting in front of a screen, because you're in this full suit. You've got, like, a full sort of, like, head thing on with cameras around your face. Yeah. And then and it's long days, like any sort of filming, but it can get quite heavy, and it's quite a sort of, it's a very different environment and sort of different situation. So, you don't get to go to cool locations. You don't, you're in this room that gets very hot because they can't turn the air conditioning on because of the noise. And you're going hour after hour after hour. But I really did love it. But interestingly, gaming, so that what I did on Star Citizen, the thing that I did is still in its beta phase. And this is the thing with gaming as well. Like, you think you're under embargo for a role for a year or two. Gaming, the process is so long, right? So you could wait 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Like, who knows when that's going to come out, and when you can talk about the role that you did on that.
So you still on an embargo?
No, not really. I mean, I guess I am to a certain extent. I mean, I was allowed to put Star Citizen on my CV, but talk about what I actually worked on, the specific project and whatever. No, I'm not going to say what that was, but I can say that it's not released yet.
That game is still it's still being made to this day, and it's been like years. Everyone keeps complaining about it. It's going to be the game that never gets made, but it will.
Yeah.
But that is, the whole mocap thing is definitely, that's just so cool to me. Like, it's, I just love it. It's definitely be something that I will want to do eventually. That's for sure.
I love it. I love it.
That's good. Well, I have one final question for you, and it's a new one that I've been asking a lot of some of my people that have come on here, and it would be, what single bit of advice would you give to people who, let's say, are my age? Let's say it's me, for example. You were to give someone, a 19-year-old, advice when it comes to the acting industry. And more so, I'd say on the mental side, not so much the technicalities and going to study it and learn it, because I feel like a lot of people can go and approach that, but I feel like the mental side is, for me anyway, a lot tougher. And it's definitely, I don't expect you to come out with something in like -2 seconds, like not at all.
So sorry, what's the question?
Just advice to people, like people my age, the people that are watching. What would you give, like for the mental aspects of the
Right,
industry,
okay.
like you said, sort of
Yeah, okay.
the whole idea of finding a new topic, a new hobby, sort of this sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't sure whether you were asking about, because you mentioned like the training and the acting
Oh
side of
yeah,
things.
I was sorry. Yeah, I was being more like
Yeah.
more specific on the mental aspect.
Yeah. So how to kind of get through the
Mm.
industry, survive, be happy,
Yeah,
live your
yeah,
life.
pretty much.
Yeah, well, I would say sort of really what we've talked about, because it's kind of the things that have saved me in terms
Mm.
of, you know, developing interests. I think so much of it so much of life, and this doesn't just apply to acting, only comes with age and experience, and sort of getting to the point where you really you're constantly reassessing what you want out of life and what makes you happy. And at the end of the day, any kind of seeking any type of external validation is not going to make you happy. I mean, I don't really believe in happiness anyway. I don't really think that exists as like I'm happy, because I think in the course of one day we can go from being happy to sad to angry to happy again to sad to, I mean, what I like to say is to get joy. You know, you can find, if you can be going through the toughest time, the saddest time, you can be depressed, but you can still find those little things that bring you joy, right? So there can be joy in sadness, there can be joy in grief. You know, like if someone dies and you're grieving and the whole family gets together and you have a few drinks and you spend time and you haven't for years and it's a nice time, that's joy, right? But it's weird
Yeah.
because you're grieving at the same time. And when it comes to the industry, it's finding the joy in the little things, finding the things that you really, really love. And it's never too late. It's never too late to find things that you might be good at. It's amazing what you can discover that you might be good at, and you'll never know unless you give it a go. And it's often things that you think that you're probably going to be terrible at or you're scared of doing, but give them a go. And at the end of the day as well, by the way, you don't have to, I think as actors, we feel like we have to be the best at everything. We feel like we have to be great at everything. And you don't. You can get joy in a lot of stuff. You can get fulfillment in things that you might not be good at. You might be a crap singer, but if you like singing, then just sing. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
And but you know, obviously when it comes to acting, I think it's important for us to recognize what we're good at and what we're not. You know, if I get asked if I can sing, I say no, because that's not something I ever want to have to do in an audition. But I will sing in my car. And do you know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is, don't sit around by the phone. Yes, it's important to put everything you have into those auditions, and when you get the work, into that work. But you know, there's that bubble. You step into that bubble, you do the work, you put it in, but then you need to step out of it again, and you need to find all those other things that will eventually be the things that actually get you that work. Because you know, the amount of commercials that I've got because I can do handstands, because I'm a yoga teacher. It's insane. So just finding yoga to help my own mental health ended up getting me work because I developed skills in this area. But also, I think actually before I became a yoga teacher, and I was practicing yoga every day. It was this one thing that I had in this industry where I had no control, where I could get up every morning and I could breathe and I could feel grounded. And it was the one, no one can take that. It doesn't matter where you are, what's going on around you. No one can take that away from you. And I think that ultimately, when I went in for these auditions for Blade Runner, that was what got me that job. I felt grounded. I was breathing. They actually said in the description, maybe someone who holds themselves, like someone who does yoga. So I think that certainly practicing that for years allowed me to hold it together in the room, but also that experience, you know, gave me the right posture and the right demeanor, I guess. So go out and find things that you might enjoy, find other, you know, there's so many different types of work out there. And at the end of the day, you know, there are always jobs where you will be able to take time off to do auditions. And the more you do auditions, the less time you will spend on those auditions as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Loren. This has been an absolute pleasure. Like, everything you've said has been so valuable. I'm so appreciative that you've come on here today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Benito. It's been really nice chatting with you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you next time in a bit.